Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw. I fell in love with taking pictures at a very early age. It was just something that my mother and I did. And for me, I've always found that photography allows me to find beauty in some of the simplest things. You know, it's framing the things that we take for granted in our day-to-day lives, you know, in a certain way can really help to bring out the beauty and help us appreciate the things that we do take for granted. So for me, it's all about finding the search for and finding new perspectives and new ways to look at things.
Great. So Tim Coleman, thank you for joining me on Shooting It Raw. Tim, I have known you for a while. This will all come out. It'll all come out in the conversation. And we haven't spoken in a few years. And let's catch up. So
yes,
yeah, let's just dive right in, right? So the photo I'm looking at right now, let me describe it so people who are listening can get a sense of it. There are two figures in the image. One person, you, is kind of walking with the arms up, threading himself through a crowd. In front of you, there's a guy who's Balinese. I know he's from Bali because we are in Bali. He's wearing a kind of a toque, just kind of, just basically covering his head. He's looking pretty fly, pretty cool. And we're surrounded by what is a wedding, a bamboo wedding, and you're the only Caucasian face in the crowd. So you're walking through. You can't see your whole face. You can just see your eye, where you're kind of looking forward. You can see your cheekbone and the skin going up because it looks like you're grinning, you're smiling, you're having an amazing time. In your right hand, you're holding a small digital camera. In your left hand, you're putting your two fingers up, like, rock and roll horns. And you're wearing a black tank top. You're snaking through, and it's an incredible moment. And so here's the question. I asked you, I said, hey, Tim, would you be on my podcast? All you need to do is pick 3 photographs that share a bit of where you are right now, what's in your head right now, and what you want to put onto the world. And this is the first one you picked. Tell me the story, man.
Well, that photo came at an interesting point of transition in my life. I was on my way to getting a divorce the year previous to that photo, and after being in a relationship for about 9 years and just giving of myself and really feeling like I had kind of put some of my professional goals and dreams on hold to support my spouse, I found myself like, okay, well, this marriage is ending. How do I get back to me? What was it about me what did I used to do before this marriage when it was just me that really brought joy to my life? And I just had this epiphany that was like, it was travel, traveling the world and experiencing different cultures, meeting different people, just looking at the world through other people's eyes as much as I could, by traveling. And so, I traveled to Hong Kong and had an amazing experience. And it was so amazing that, after my divorce, I was like, that was just too good to be true. So I'm going to have to go back for round 2 and really, instead of just staying in Hong Kong, maybe travel with my friends, Ran and Delian, to someplace and experience a trip with them. And so we decided to go to Bali. And I remember you saying, if you're going to travel with us, you got to get your chops up and on the back of a motorcycle, because that's the way we like to travel. So it was like, okay, here we're headed for Bali for this amazing trip on a motorcycle. And I was really a novice, just a total rookie on a motorcycle. And I remember that first day we took off from Denpasar headed, west, and I almost died. So it was sort of like this. Okay, that I almost died.
Sink or swim.
This is what living is all about.
Sink or swim. Come on, you can do it.
Yeah, added a little extra spice to the voyage, know, and then so here we were. Our first stop was in Medewi, and we're sitting there watching the sunset, watching people surf, and one of the locals came up and chatted us up. And, we invited him to dinner with us, and over the course of dinner, he invited us to go to this wedding. Mm-hmm. And so it was one of those things where, most people that I know would have been like, hell no. I don't know you. Mm-hmm. I'm not following you off into the sugarcane fields to God knows where. Like, there's no way.
Yeah.
But, that sort of trepidation just never crossed my mind, and I don't think it crossed y'all's minds either. Nope. And so here we were, like, we just stumbled onto this amazing wedding it was like about a 20-person bamboo band, like a bunch of bamboo instruments, xylophones, whatnot. And there was a Balinese dancer, and it was just, it was like,
it was magical.
Like we were celebrity.
It was, but
it wasn't like the original Wedding Crashers, know, and here we were just welcomed with open arms. And it was just one of those things. Like, that is exactly the kind of experience that I was looking for to sort of get back to me. And so I found that photo really sort of encapsulates achieving that goal of just, because I always, the thing that I really love about traveling is being in this foreign culture and, another language, and just figuring out how to make connections with people and enjoy myself. And I think that picture really, really speaks to that.
Oh, for sure. I've known you through Delian, and it's one of these things that as soon as we meet, we just, you're the kind of person who just gives the energy forward, and it's like the brightness and the warmth. Yeah, we were like, let's rehabilitate Tim, so we went to Bali. If I can kind of round out the photo, is that, so basically there were hundreds of people at this wedding, and it's outside. And you have the the sort of the Balinese band playing like the percussion on the sort of the bamboo metal xylophones, and the music was all around us, and it was full, and it was deep, and it was so total, and it was so uplifting. That day was easily one of the most magical musical events I've been lucky enough to be in, because if we place ourselves back at that feeling, of that, the music was so, it was almost syncopated, and it was really like traveling in a sense, and everybody was all in there. And so that we stood out because of our foreignness or whatever, it was, obvious. We're the only sort of foreigners there. And that's why they pulled us to the front to dance individually with the traditional Balinese dancer.
Yes.
What I find also interesting is that making the connections, like, this is you previously in a marriage that is just so dark and so terrible, and you just needed, your health needed to get out of, so you could sort of reconnect to your own life. And isn't it interesting that the next event that made you, that you connect in your mind in terms of your history and your thought process, is in fact a marriage ceremony on the other side of the world?
Absolutely. Yeah. Call it a rebound.
That was so good.
But no, I think that really lends itself to like how special it was, because you think about Wedding Crashers, and it's like, oh, well, how dare you like intrude on, like it's most cultures, like marriage is a holy sacrament.
Yeah.
So it's like this sacred ritual. And here's this guy, this pasty white dude from Houston, Texas, that rides up on his motorcycle, it's just like, hey,
Super fun.
Let's get married.
Well, not you. But it was truly, it's a testament to actually an experience of being in a different culture where actually, you know what, everybody can come along. It's a time of celebration. And also, yeah, that they'll we literally knew the guy for about 3 or 4 hours beforehand. And then he invites us to this wedding. And it was like his little decision, like, you know what, I'm going to invite these people to this wedding because it's fun and it's great. And he did that. And then here we are 12 years later, still so connected to that moment.
Absolutely. And it's like, I guess when you asked me to pick out 3 photographs, I tried to pick out photographs that were metaphors for like these seminal moments in my life.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like something that was very representational and moments that I felt helped were like moments of transition for me.
Mm-hmm.
Sort
mm-hmm.
of reawakening or just being in the moment
mm-hmm.
and making the most of it.
Right. Right. Very present. Very present.
Absolutely.
Let's use that as the sort of the natural segue to go to the next one, which is just, again, bonkersly perfect. The photograph is it could very well be a color photograph, but it's rendered because you're photographing into the sun. So there's 1/3 of the image is just the sky with a very, very high cloud, mostly like sunny with cloudy periods, like very, very bright. The bottom looks like an ocean or a sea, and the focal point of the image is a figure, a human. I'm assuming it's you. I know it's you. It must be you. Caught flipping in a flip. And so you're hugging your legs, your feet are pointing straight up to the sky, your head is pointing straight down to the ground, and it's perfectly symmetric, like balanced, that it's just that you're upside down, like perfectly upside down. And what makes the image really kind of pop is that your complete silhouetted image in this crouched pose is in the line of the sunlight reflecting off the water. So whoever made this photo, props, respect. Like it was perfect.
That was me. I'm the cameraman.
Oh, you're the photographer.
I am.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And so
who's flipping?
It was a weird thing. I mean, and that was, it's another example of like what I really enjoy about traveling. I had made plans to go with this woman. It was actually our first date.
Oh.
She was a neighbor of mine. And I have a friend in Oregon that had another friend that owned a condo on the island of Roatan, Honduras, which is about a 2-hour flight south of Houston. So, we organized this trip to go and meet my friend and stay at this condo for free in Roatan for a week. And so my neighbor and I bought tickets. We're all ready to go. And about a week before we were heading down there, my friend called me and said, "Hey, sorry, my friend's condo is under repair. I'm not going to go. He's not going. I apologize." And so here my neighbor and I are like, "Well, we've got tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just go anyway and we'll figure it out." And
nice.
So we ended up staying at like this cool little beach shack resort that had this pier out in front that was like L-shaped. And so if you walked out, it took a sharp turn to the right. And at the end of the L, there was like a double-decker deck. It was like 2-story deck.
Mm-hmm.
And so my date and I were up there listening to music, just having some cocktails, and people would come up and jump off the top into the ocean down below.
Oh, wow. It looks high.
It was about, 20 feet over the water.
Mm-hmm.
And this 2 guys and a woman came up. And so they were running along the railing and jumping off. So there's like, I have a series of that guy in that image taken from the back as he ran along the, was sort of, just had my high speed shutter going and just took random series of photos of him running and jumping off, and then his buddy jumping off. And then I moved around and switched angles so that I could, hopefully get him silhouetted by the sun, the sunset coming down. Perfectly. And it was just one of those things, it was like, oh my God, you don't know what you have until you open up your card and see what images you've got. And it was like, here, like I had every reason to not go on this trip. But my friend and I went and we made the most of it. And to be honest with you, I think that is my favorite photo of all time.
Oh, wow. Well, it's
just because the way it happened,
it
was just luck. And like I said in the beginning, it's just finding beauty in sort of mundane things. And that's really what I think photography can do.
Yeah, well, like for example, one of the things that I kind of use as a thought experiment is to say, look, let's assume a photograph, the shutter opens and closes on average, let's say 1/60th of a second or 250th of a second, like in this image or whatever. And in effect, 1 second of real time could have 250 photos. Or 1 second of real time could have 60 photos, like for 1/60th of a second. In a way, isn't it amazing that, you made all these images and that this one moment that is just, everything lines up so perfectly. This one moment you managed to get, and it can inspire and it can make people look again, and it can make people just kind of go, wow, like it just so thought-provoking, uplifting. So when I saw it, I just thought that was you and somebody was photographing you. And somehow they managed to get this absolutely perfect moment. But you're the photographer and you managed to get this absolutely perfect moment. But because the person is in perfect silhouette, that could be anybody. That could be any one of us. And I love it. It's such a good photo.
And it's just
a pregnant pause.
And it's just like the thing is sort of, things are upside down.
Yeah,
they can be upside down, but they can also be beautiful at the same time.
Sure,
it just goes back to how you choose to view what's going on around you. How you choose to perceive your own reality.
Well, look at you. You just lined up the next photo. I mean, better than that, I couldn't have done. Let's go on to the next photo because, man, what an image. Okay, this is a big one. Okay, so let me describe it. Unless you want to describe it, like visually, so somebody who's looking at it can get a sense of what we're looking at.
Go ahead. You do a beautiful job. I've listened to several of your podcasts. It's awesome.
Thank you. Okay, so it's a photo of a group, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people who are clearly friendly with each other. One woman is holding probably what looks like a plastic gun. One guy is kind of hugging what looks like a brand new spade. One guy has what looks like maybe what's that called? Stand-up paddleboard paddle. One woman is putting her hand up with something in her hand. I don't know what it is. Oh, she has rubber gloves that look quite dirty. One guy behind is standing with a bottle of probably Heineken. And then there's you with a healthy beard holding what looks like a jigsaw, like a cordless jigsaw. Now, that's fine. So you have this group photo. Around you is broken up wood, benches, the insides like flooring, what could be the roof. Like there's a young child's blackboard with something written on it even, and behind this mass of just construction debris is the lawn, which looks okay. You've got the fence, and then you've got one of those houses that looks like a ranch style house, all one floor, brown brick. But yeah, this is a whole group that have pitched in together, obviously positive, feeling good. Take it away, Tim.
Well, that photo is the aftermath of Hurricane Harvey, which hit 3 years ago here in Houston. And my house had about 23 inches of standing water in it. And so, in the middle of the storm, I just, it was time to get out of my house as the water level was rising and, getting close to the outlets in my house.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So it was like, okay, I probably need to get out of here before I start getting shocked and whatnot. So I ended up going next door, that house that you see to the right, to my neighbor's house. He's an avid kayak fisherman. So I borrowed a kayak of his and grabbed my dog and got in the kayak and kayaked 6 miles through the hurricane to my ex-wife's house.
Oh, wow.
And stayed there with my daughter and my ex-wife and I helped them, secure things around their house. Fortunately, only her garage flooded, but my house was pretty much a total loss.
Oh,
and
wow.
So all that debris you see around me is just the flooring. There's tile, like that's hardwood floor cut up into sections, couches. I mean,
it's a mountain of household.
Yeah, a mountain of debris.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was, I didn't go back the next day to my house. Like the water went down fairly rapidly. I'd say in about 16 hours. Like I could have gone back to my house, but I just stayed a day. And so I went back the second day and I wanted to go by myself because I knew it was going to be emotional because of course I wasn't able to secure everything that I wanted to. And so, went into my house, had a good cry, and just kind of let go of things and just accepted this new reality. And then went ahead and started the demolition myself, because that was really my therapy was, swinging a sledgehammer and, getting out the power tools, the Sawzall, and just going for it. And the amazing thing, Rand, was just, here I was sort of at rock bottom, just like, oh my gosh, like some of my most treasured possessions, like photos that I had that were from pre-digital age, I'd forgotten in a box and, they were all ruined. And it was, I still haven't been able to go through that box just to pinpoint exactly what all was lost. And that's been 3 years, so it's, here I was just broken and I had people showing up to just random strangers would come up and knock on my door. And I'd like, what? Go to the door and can I help you? And I'm like, no, can I help you? You need any help, man? And it was just, so then it just began this, no pun intended, like this flood of love and support. I started, I had some friends post some things on Facebook about the flood and the devastation. And so people that I hadn't talked to since high school would send me a check for, $500 here, $250 here, $1,000 here.
Oh, wow.
Literally people I hadn't seen in 30, 40 years. And it was just this outpouring of love. A very good girlfriend of mine came over and she started up a GoFundMe for me that ended up raising $10,000. And in this photo, right there to the left of me in the blue shirt is my best friend in Houston, Gustavo. And behind him with the Heineken is my other best friend here in Houston, Justin. And then that's my daughter, Gabriella. The idea of this photo was to sort of do a goofy take on American Gothic. So it's like she's got my BB gun, my daughter in the yellow, and behind her is my ex-wife. And to the left of her is an Australian fellow that was good friends with my ex-wife. And he was a huge help, even though I think his motivations might have been to get with my ex-wife, which was fine because he's in there cleaning and busting up, Yeah. And just to let you know that that tool that he's holding.
Oh, it's a tool.
In Hawaii, they call it an a'a, which is just a digging stick. It's made out of iron. And so the tip of it, which you can't see, it's cutting off at the very bottom there is just like a chisel. And it's very heavy, about 20, 30 pounds. And it's like the best tool for demo. You know, you would slide it up underneath those sections of hardwood floor that were stuck to the floor with tar, and you just slide it under there and pry it up. And yeah, it was awesome.
Wow. Well, okay. So a couple of things that stand out. One is the lights are on inside the building. So I was like, okay, so the light, there's one light. It's like the outdoor sort of light that sort of welcomes people in. There's the American flag, right? You know, Americans love their flag. What makes the image is that now that I know that's your daughter, you're both wearing these bright yellow t-shirts, and visually the two of you stand out. Whereas the other people, because it's all somewhat muted colors, they kind of almost fade out in terms of perception, right? So when I look at this, you know, the two people who are holding the BB gun that your daughter's holding, the saw or whatever that you're holding, they're both kind of held together in the same orientation. So just visually, it's kind of like as a photograph. If I was going to look at it aesthetically, there's a lot going on, and it's beautifully composed and all that stuff. And then there's the content of the image, right? So we go deeper into the content of it, which if people can connect with, like when I see it, I connect it to the tsunami, right? Because the tsunami just came in and it just destroyed everybody's houses. And it's from one moment to the next, from one day to the next. And this is another value of the podcast, is like, what if we can make every moment count? You know, what if every second is a gift? And so I'm sure that while you were waiting to sort of go back to your house, your headspace went down to some dark places. And then when you came back and had to face it, you had to kind of, in a sense, clear out the wreckage of your own head in the same way like with your house.
Yes.
It's kind of quite metaphorical. And also, since I know what has happened since then, how about you talk about what's the symbolism of rebuilding your house and where you are today?
Well, it's that's a great question. You know, when that photo was taken, I was working as a school counselor. Like the gentleman drinking the beer behind me, Justin, he's a coworker of mine. He's a PE coach at my school. And, you know, so it was just, it inspired me to go ahead and get my professional license in counseling, so that, you know, I could take what I do during the day from, you know, 7:30 to 2:35 every day with the kids at my high school, that I could go out and support other people in the community, you know, whoever it might be, whoever shows up. I mean, it's like my client base is, you know, very similar to the kids that I work with during the day at school, to couples and geriatric clients, you know. So I find it fascinating and very challenging. You know, I like sort of in the sense of shooting it raw, just counseling in the raw, you know, just having people show up, and it's just like, hey, Rand, like, what brings you into the office today? And you just have no idea where that conversation is going to take you in a therapeutic setting. So it's just fascinating. And for me, I guess what that whole experience showed me was, like I said before, it's like, here I was at rock bottom, you know, all my worldly possessions. Well, everything that I didn't stash up in the attic was gone. You know, no furniture, the kitchen, everything's just destroyed. But yet here I was, you know, able to find meaning and joy and rebirth in the midst of all this devastation, you know. And it was just, I mean, the whole neighborhood, the whole city of Houston, for the most part, was just, I mean, I kayaked 6 miles across Houston and only had to get out one time to drag my kayak about 30 meters to where it would float again. So it was like kayaking through Venice or something, just all these boulevards of muddy water and devastation and silence. And this giant city that was just all you could hear was wind and rain. It was really an amazing experience, and it went from, oh my God, I've lost everything, to, sort of that Fight Club moment where it's like, hey, the stuff you own ends up owning you in the end. It was like, here I was liberated. Like, prior to that experience, I would have to admit that I was a bit of an emotional hoarder. I still have some t-shirts from my first archaeological digs back in 1991. It's like, maybe I should pitch that, but it's Harvey came along and helped me purge a number of things, and it was very liberating. I loved my house, but it was a bit of a money pit, and it was like, okay, for a few years I'd been sort of trying to find an exit strategy, but it's one of those deals where you buy a fixer-upper and then you don't have the funds to fix it up. So what do? I'm sort of stuck in this place. And here comes this hurricane. And, the initial reaction is like, oh my God, like devastation. And then it turns to, you're going to give me $140,000 in insurance? Like, this is fantastic. This is like a weight off my shoulders. And, it's just, I think that the lesson that I had was just being able to find meaning in like the worst situations.
Right.
It's just, like I said earlier, it's a matter of perspective, how you choose to look at these things.
So how does that inform? I mean, clearly it'll inform how you connect with people in terms of your counseling. So one of the things, so I hadn't met you until you came and hung and actually stayed a couple of weeks with us in Hong Kong. And it was just like, Tim, and maybe it's because I'm the kind of person who likes to sit with people and have these intense conversations, but you were certainly a participant where we would have these intense conversations. And then fast forward to the next year or a couple of years later, whenever you came and we went to Bali, again, this very not self-reflective, but reflective time together. And so I know you as a person who speaks his heart and his mind easily. And so I could see how in something like the hurricane, and then later as a counselor, this part of who you are is so useful or great at connecting with other people. So right now, in terms of COVID, what's the reaction as a counselor of people turning to you? What, like, as a counselor, speak to the current reality as a trained counselor.
Well, I guess that I would start off by just a brief description of what my philosophy of counseling is. Which theory of counseling I ascribe to, and I was feeling this way before I even got into graduate school, thanks to Miss Delian Gaskell. Because when I was going through my divorce, she sent me a self-help book titled "When Things Fall Apart" by Pema Chodron. And the book, Pema Chodron is a Buddhist, so there's a lot of information about Buddhism, but Buddhist perspective, just basically that bad things happen, and the only thing that we can control is how we choose to react when those bad things happen. And you can run away from the pain, or you can turn into it and deal with it and find some way to grow from it. And that really spoke to me. Okay. Because it's like the simile that I like to give people is, it's like when you feel like you want to cry and you're putting it off. It's like, no, I'm a big, strong man. I'm a macho dude. I can't cry. And then it overcomes you and you have a good cry. And immediately afterward, you feel like 30 pounds lighter. It's just like this huge weight has been lifting off your soul. And like, this crying is very therapeutic. It's your body telling you like, hey, I need to release all of this energy and let's just have this catharsis and get it out, and so I believe, when we're faced with challenges, you should turn into them and face them and sort of run towards the flames instead of away, because it's not going to go away just by running away. The sooner that you turn into it and you face it, the better off you're going to be.
One of the, if I can interrupt for a second, when I do some training with people, in terms of both actually in terms of the leadership training, but also in terms of the coaching and, the Muay Thai training, it's very much this idea of, oddly enough, it's like go towards, don't go away, but go towards, for example, go towards or into the punch. Go into the kick, which is kind of very counterintuitive until you learn how to make that your practice, because that just going towards or into a punch or into a kick, in fact, saps the energy and helps you get through it. And when you're telling me like you have to face it, for example, like you waking up the next morning and saying, okay, I'm going to go into that house and go into it as a therapeutic step, I'm 100% behind you.
Yeah, and then there was another book that a friend gave me. It's called Man's Search for Meaning, and the author is Viktor Frankl. Mm-hmm. And Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist that spent time in 4 Nazi death camps, Auschwitz, Dachau, a few others.
Wow.
And, he had this medical training, and so they would use him as a doctor among the Jews in these death camps. Yeah. And the book is all about, even while he was in these Nazi death camps, these horrible human conditions, people were able to find meaning. And so it was just like, okay, well, that's people choosing to find some good, some meaning in their life and turning into, this challenge, this horrible situation that they're dealing with. And they're able to through perspective and just the sure will, like able to find meaning in their life. It's an awesome book. I highly recommend it. And that's something that those two things really formed my philosophy of it and my approach to counseling and helping my clients, because it's like, okay, client A, you've dealt with, abuse in your childhood, but what are we going to do now? I like to focus. I don't really delve into the past too much because I just believe there's not anything that we can really do to change the past. I strive to help people reframe their perceptions of the things that they're doing and move past these past stressors or transgressions and crises that they've had, the trauma that they've had in their past, and just find some way to help them find closure so that they can compartmentalize it and move on and hopefully get back on a healthier pathway in their life. So fast forward to 2020 with COVID, and it's just anxiety, man. It's everywhere.
Would you agree that right now we're having a generation of kids who are forming, their psyche is forming in this past couple of years, like this year and next, or say this year and last, like however you want to put those the bookends that contain this period of the pandemic. And because I have a kid who's 9 years old, that in a decade there's going to be the syndrome that's going to come out. The fears and anxieties are just going to surface or bubble up. What's your perception of what's happening these days, this year?
Well, I believe the largest amount of anxiety is coming from disinformation. There's like these warring factions of information that are, we just concluded a presidential election, which is never a good thing for people's anxiety. And so we had this perfect storm of, our sitting president and this war on facts to garner favor in an election year is sort of politicizing a pandemic. I would say, it's perhaps on both sides, but it's honestly, I don't know about kids having a syndrome, Rand, because one thing that really strikes me being around young kids and just, I've been in education for 20 years now. And so it's like, as you see technology become more and more a part of our daily lives, I think we might be headed towards a syndrome more if there weren't things like Snapchat and Facebook and FaceTime and whatnot, because the things that I've seen in my daughter and her friends and in a number of my students is like, I don't know what it was like for you, but me and my friend group, when we grew up, our parents came and got us out of school on our 16th birthday to take us down to the Department of Motor Vehicles so that we could take our driver's test, get our license, and be semi-autonomous. The parents were like, hey, great, I don't have to drive you everywhere. You're more self-sufficient, and that's what we all did. It was like, hey, yeah, going to get my driver's test. Mom's taking me out of school early, blah, blah, blah. And nowadays, like, kids aren't even really interested in getting their driver's license. I would say the majority of them are not.
Wow.
And it's like, and even my daughter, she was 17 years old when she got hers. And it was sort of like an afterthought, like, oh, okay, I might as well go ahead and get my license now, because these days you don't have to drive to your friend's house to be with your friends. You've got this suite of technology, your Snapchat, Instagram, FaceTime, whatever the case may be, and you're with your friends, whereas when I was that age, you had these phones with a really long stretchy cord on them, and you would, stretch it to its limit to try to get some privacy so that your parents couldn't hear your conversation, So it's just, I think that with this explosion of technology, I think it's helped people stay connected. I'm just amazed at all these collaborations, where you see all these artists get together and they do these songs on Zoom, and it's very uplifting, and it's a lot easier these days to be connected. And while there may be a lot of disinformation out there, I mean, the information is out there if you just want to dig and find it.
So you have the experience of counseling in schools, counseling children, but you're also midlife, also the elderly, as you said. So
yes.
For the people who are hurting right now, who are having the difficulty, what can we give them, or what can you say as a kind of antidote to what's been happening with COVID in terms of the anxieties, in terms of the misinformation? As a counselor, what tools can you suggest for people to actually use to help them get through some difficult times at the moment, either in terms of loneliness, in terms of anxiety, in terms of anguish?
Yeah. What I suggest to people all the time is like going back to when we were all in lockdown. It was like, okay, well, we're not commuting to work. We're not really going to work. We're working remotely. There should be more spare time. And so for me, like the things that I was suggesting that people do was something that they just wanted to do, whether it be like learning a language or dancing or just some sort of activity that they'd had on their bucket list. Go ahead and lean into that. Connect with your friends as much as possible. Write a letter. I mean, when was the last time you got like a handwritten letter from somebody? And it's just, and it's crazy because now when you get one, it's like, oh my God, this is so special, and it's just little things like that, just sort of turning the focus away from the outside, all the noise, and just shutting that off as much as possible and just focusing on the things that you can control. It's get into like learning how to cook Thai food or something like that, just something that I guess, personal, professional development.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, just focusing on yourself, just using that time constructively. I always believe that,
Right.
staying busy, it helps keep you from dwelling on things that you can't control anyway.
Uh-huh. So have you been doing that yourself?
Yes, I have. I'm working with a friend right now, which is pretty crazy. It's a guy that I met when I got a grant to go study Spanish literature in Costa Rica. And in this little town I was in Costa Rica, I met this guy from Nebraska that was down in Costa Rica building his own tapas restaurant. And this guy is studied culinary arts in Spain, very charismatic, great guy. We've kept in touch over the years. And just about a month ago, he called me up out of the blue and was like, hey, I've got this idea. I want to create an online program to teach people kitchen Spanish because I have a good buddy who's a chef and he can't communicate with the people that are working in his kitchen. And so here we are, and I think it's got a lot of great potential. And I've always wanted to do something, having been a Spanish teacher for 7 years, a bilingual teacher 4 years before that. I've always participated. I was a study abroad student to Argentina for a summer. I studied abroad in France. I studied abroad in Mexico. I had that grant in Costa Rica. I taught English in Colombia. So I've got a lot of experience with international education, foreign language education. And so I had a business plan years ago, but I sort of chickened out after 9/11 because post 9/11, there was a lot of uncertainty about issuing student visas, and that was going to be my clientele. So it was like, okay, well, let me just go into regular education, shelve that. And so here comes this odd connection out of the blue. And I told him, I was like, I'm so glad you called me because I've always wanted to do something like this, but doing it on my own just seemed a bit too daunting. And he was like, oh my God, I'm the same way, so hopefully if we put our heads together, we can make something that could be pretty awesome.
From my work in terms of as a business consultant, in terms of when we talk about entrepreneurship, which is essentially what you're doing with your friend, that entrepreneurial moment is about getting people together, like the human ingenuity and human power, human ability to create things is by working together, by bringing people together. So you're kind of right now you're in that startup stage of connecting with this co-founder who together you're going to create something. It makes perfect sense. Perfect sense.
Yes. And what is that? Sorry. I turn my phone off and it's like, I turn off, I got my phone on the computer here and it's like, damn it. So that's my
the computer tells.
I want to talk about this, but no, it was over. My COVID experience was I flew home the first part of March for spring break to go with my parents, just hang out for a week. And while I was up there, they decided to shut down the school, so I extended my flight another week. And then the district came back and said, okay, well, we're going to postpone school for another 2 weeks. So I postponed my flight for another 2 weeks. And then I ended up canceling it. And so I stayed for the first 9.5 weeks of the pandemic up in Oregon at my parents' house, who have a lovely 7-acre house, riverfront property.
Oh, wow.
I could go to my 2-bedroom apartment in Houston or stay here and catch trout in the backyard. This is a no-brainer. And in February of last year, I'd purchased tickets to go to Iceland for 16 days with my daughter because she graduated from high school and that was going to be our senior trip. And so right when I got back to Houston from Oregon, I learned that they'd canceled our flight because,
Sure.
America wasn't doing very well and managing the coronavirus. And Iceland, a very small population, had tested everybody. And they're like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks.
You guys stay together.
So I called my daughter. I was like, oh, bad news. And she's like, that's okay, Dad. Let's drive to Oregon. Let's do a road trip then. And so we
wicked.
took 5 weeks and hit all these amazing national parks, state parks on the way up to Oregon and on the way back. And it was, 8,000 miles in about 5 weeks. And it was just incredible.
Oh, awesome. Hey, shoot me a photo from that trip.
Oh, okay.
So
Absolutely.
I can use it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great.
And just that time on the road with your kid, and just it was priceless. So, I guess that was my way of dealing with COVID. Was like, okay, well, we've had this awesome plan, we had this awesome trip set up, but that got shut down. So let's make the most of it.
Yeah.
Driving across the country and camping, that's really going to reduce our exposure to the virus. And, we're social distancing in our tent, masking up.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting just driving through rural America and all the Trump flags. And it was very interesting, the dichotomy of this country, just the conservative rural areas and the liberal urban areas. It was really interesting. So, that was that. I guess, there's a lot of people that were just would have been too afraid to do that. There's just too much uncertainty out there. And it was like, well, maybe we did put ourselves at some unnecessary risk, but based on the information that we had our hand sanitizer, our masks, kept our distance, just did what we could to mitigate the risk. And we had an awesome time, had an amazing time.
And move forward. I have to end this. I love talking to you, but really, really, if anything, it's kind of like go towards the problem, go towards the pain. You're given a pandemic, so let's get in the car and go toward. Let's go toward Oregon. Let's go toward your parents' house. So yeah, nice.
Yeah, in your face, COVID.
Usually our language is pretty colorful. we haven't we've been really quite professional. But yeah, in your face, COVID. Tim, thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you, Ren.
Stay well. Take care.
Give your ladies a hug and kiss for me.
Shooting it raw?
Yes.